where I am today is 90% better than where I was. And some days I'm 100% better. So it all started with one morning in January of 2022. I woke up and I had a kind of a tingling in my ears, kind of a buzz. And it's not something that I hadn't heard before. I felt like it was noticeable. It was something that I had experienced in the past, but it wasn't that loud, right?
Hey everyone, it's Ben Thompson. I hope you're enjoying watching this video, 95 minutes of tinnitus success stories. It was recorded on the April 2023 Tinnitus Triumph Summit. Well, just last week in the end of July 2023, I hosted the most recent Tinnitus Triumph Summit featuring 6 graduates from our program at Treble Health. In honor of the graduates and to take these tools that have done so much good for many in our Treble Health community, we have created a Tinnitus Triumphs bundle, a special offer that lasts until the end of this Monday. So if you're watching this the following Monday, this offer will end at the end of day on Monday. And I'd like for you to learn more about it. It may really help you with your tinnitus. So you can go and click the link below in the description or head over to treblehealth.com where you'll find this information. Whether you're just here to watch this success story video or you're potentially interested in working with our team at Treble Health, I hope you find relief from tinnitus very soon.
I also had a stuffy nose and I thought it was just a regular head cold, but that really wasn't the case. After a couple of weeks, it persisted. And with that persistence came my anxiety, and I got all stressed out and worried about it. And it just kind of spiraled from there. And I went to a number of audiologists. I tested for my hearing, which was perfect, at least from the standpoint of most tests go. So there really was no answer for me other than just give it some time, or you'll learn to live with it. And that's like the last thing you want to hear. So it just became more and more anxious about it. And during that time, my state of mind went down. I became very depressed. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and it just kind of got worse from there. So that's when I started to reach out, and I came across you guys, and I called you up and scheduled an appointment. And then I guess we can go from there. And then I guess my road to recovery started soon thereafter.
Excellent. Now I'd like to bring in Dr. Suzanne May, who worked with you, Steve. So Dr. Suzanne, would you like to comment on what you saw when you first met Steve, and also some of these common themes when patients do arrive to us?
Yeah, I met Steve when he joined Treble Health, and he definitely was what we would call stage 1 of habituation, which is that kind of first fight or flight stage, with having some anxiety, very worried about his tinnitus, and how it was going to affect his life, and wanting to get some tools on how to get himself into a better place with his tinnitus. So that's where we started, and we worked together for, I forget how long we worked together for.
About 3 months.
About 3 months. Yep. And he did get sound therapy on his ear, and that helped him immensely. And he can talk about that a little bit more. And we got to a place where he was feeling like he was in stage 4 of habituation, where I'm not worried about my tinnitus. My anxiety is lower. My emotional reactions are lower, and I'm back to everyday activities. So.
All right. So Steve, tell us about that journey, and specifically for everyone who's here wanting to learn, how did you do it? Right. So first we'll talk about what are the tools you used, and then you can give some advice to others who are in a similar place, and then some words of encouragement. So what tools were beneficial to you in your tinnitus treatment?
Well, there's a number of things, but I would say, Ben, first and foremost was the education and the confidence I got from Suzanne, and being very open and honest with me, and telling me that it will get better. And Suzanne having tinnitus herself and been through it, I felt like there was someone I could really entrust, and I trusted her, and she explained to me how it works, the process works. And the more I would ask her questions, she would be always available for those questions, and when my panic attacks were happening. And so the education was extremely valuable. Not only that, just hearing all the positive stories that I've seen on your channel, hearing other folks explain how they were in such a bad place as I had been experiencing, but they got better and they improved. And it was something that happens regularly. It happens, the habituation process will occur. It's your brain's way of taking the time to fix itself in a sense. And so for me, it turned around when I believed that, when I finally believed that, okay, it's going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It may not happen a week from now, but just being aware that in time it will. And I was able to settle down. And when I did settle down, I started to notice a difference. And that difference came in brief moments of like, I don't hear it anymore. Like it was gone at that moment. And I was having a conversation with someone, and I just so remember to this day that the first time, like I had to like look for it, like, oh my God, and that's what it's like. That's what I get it now. And then that just kept on happening. And it happened with the help of, I had ear level sound generators on, which helped distract my brain and help distract the noise. And I relied on that for a while, but knowing that it was most likely a temporary thing. And it ended up being a temporary thing until I got over that anxiety and that hump. And slowly but surely that the anxiety came down, and actually the periods of not hearing it increased into the point where it was, some days I don't have it at all. Now, it also, I know some people don't, if you're in a bad state, I was totally there. I totally understand. And it's extremely loud. It's in your conscious. It's constantly there. You can't think of anything else. I mean, that's really what it was dealing with. But it does fade away. It fades away into the background to the point where a lot of times it's not there. And I don't really hear it. It's true. I don't really hear it. I could hear it if I want to, but it's so much softer. And I just, just knowing that, hearing that from other people and experiencing myself was just, it was really a breakthrough. And I couldn't have done it without the help of Suzanne and you guys, really the education and really just understanding the process, knowing that it's going to happen, and just trusting it and having that time to trust it. And that's when it happened. And that's when I started to get improved.
Let's go on that education point, because what we know is that when the brain categorizes tinnitus as a potential threat, a danger, life-threatening, or unknown, it can take the sound that may have just been there and make it louder, more on our focus, harder to think about anything else. So I'm asking both of you, how did that process go in terms of those important pieces of what is tinnitus? Can I have my questions answered about this? Can I start to understand why I have this, the cause of it? I'd like to ask you both there, because education is a big tool, not only just to feel better, but really to promote this treatment effect. So what do you all think about that?
Well, I'll start, Suzanne. I mean, I had a lot of questions. I was familiar with tinnitus because my dad has Meniere's disease, and he had experienced it for many years. And so I knew what it was, and I always had a fear of it as a kid. So when this happened to me, it just kind of like made it was like the worst thing, and I was afraid of it. And that anxiety kind of made it worse. Like you described, it really became the focus. Really, for me, asking Suzanne questions, I always had questions. Is it going to get worse as I get older? And I was for me, I woke up one morning with it. It just came out of the blue. So I wanted to understand where it came from. Why me? What happened to cause it? And so I went down that rabbit hole and was trying to figure it out. I went through an ABR test, audio brainstem response test. I went through more tests than I probably needed to do just to try to uncover. To this day, I really don't know what sparked it in that morning, but nonetheless, it was here. So those questions, that education, hearing Suzanne explain to me from how it works with the sound, I was actually getting new sounds because I was so focused on it. And I was so worried. I started hearing more sounds that I hadn't heard before. And then I was asking her about those. And eventually those faded away again. And I think that was like, she was explaining to me, that was your brain like thinking like you have to hear these other things, because I was trying to hear something. So to try to hear it. And your brain was really, okay, here's a sound. You really want to hear this thing. And that's kind of like explain how that works. And she'll do a better job of that, explaining that part. But anyway, I'll let Suzanne fill in the blanks here.
I'd just say that, being a tinnitus specialist and having tinnitus myself, like I have not only the personal experience, but the expertise experience. And just being able to answer any questions that came along, and being able to, give examples from other patients that I had worked with in the past. I think that helped a lot. My own personal experience, that helped a lot. I'm always a big fan of explaining anatomy and how things work inside the body, because I feel like that really answers a lot of questions. And we had a really good rapport and back and forth. And that's actually one of the best parts about Treble Health, is having that communication with your provider to answer all your questions as you're going through this process.
Yeah.
Steve, what do you do for work? What's your profession?
I'm a pharmacist.
So how did that knowledge affect your journey here with tinnitus? And that can just be as a scientist, learning, researching, and then also as someone who might wonder, is there a pharmaceutical treatment for this? How did that process go for you?
It probably hurt as much as it helped me, to be honest with you, because having that research and that scientific background, I really tried to uncover what it was that caused this in me. And I think going down that rabbit hole made it worse, right? So it kind of hurt a little bit. But no, I really embraced my background as a pharmacist and looking for kind of answers in that realm, but quickly understanding, it actually made me research more and understand the brain a lot more. It was something I hadn't really thought about from a neurological standpoint, and how, from a pharmacist, I'm working with pharmaceuticals and medicine. And so it's slightly different in terms of a neurological situation. So it made me look into the research. But quite honestly, you guys provide so much education and so much explanation. You do a great job in putting it in layman's terms to understand really what's happening from the mind, the brain, the limbic system, and all the stuff that's related to the generation of the sound, to the anxiety and your relationship with your emotions. That eventually, understanding all of that was really helpful to saying there's a path forward, and that path forward is habituation, and then all these things kind of settle down in time. And so that really helped with my confidence, really.
Mm. And as much as you'd like to share, do you have any advice for others who may have questions about pills, pharmaceuticals, managing anxiety related to tinnitus? As much as you feel comfortable with, do you have any advice for others in that who have that question?
Yeah, I mean, don't look for a pill to like stop the sound immediately. It doesn't really work that way. If you're going down that's not going to be helpful. What is helpful is settling your system, calming your brain down, comfortable with knowing that you're going to be better, that how it is today is not how it's going to be in the future. It just takes a long time to really believe that. And once it starts happening, then that confidence grows. I have no shame in admitting that I did take some pharmaceuticals at the beginning to help me get over the anxiety, right? I couldn't sleep. I was taking sleeping pills and other medications to calm my system down and to help me with that for those first couple of months where it was really dramatic. I have never experienced depression before. I'm always usually a happy-go-lucky guy until this happened. So I got to experience what that was too for the first time. And so I would say the medicines could help from a sleeping standpoint, helping calm you down, anti-anxiety medications, some SSRIs, what works for you, as long as you get to that place of calm and understanding and calmness. Really, that's really the benefit of the medicines. Not necessarily going to stop the sound, but in time, when your system is calm and you start to experience those parts of where it's not there, that's when you grow and you get better and better.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like for Suzanne, you to comment on really your perspective on what Steve went through, how it relates to other people. And then we'll have more time, Steve, for you to share other advice and also encouragement.
So Steve definitely went through, I would say, all 4 stages of the habituation process. You'll hear that term talked about a lot. Habituation really is like a decreasing in your physical and emotional reactions to a repeated stimuli. So, the physical reactions of an upset tummy, sweaty palms, the emotional reactions being anxiety, or even a little bit of sadness. You do go through the grieving process when you have tinnitus, for sure. And so just taking them through and breaking it down step by step of, here is the anatomy of the ear and how it works. And this is what's happening with the brain and how it's perceiving tinnitus. And this is what's happening with the emotional center with tinnitus. And this is, what you're going through, this cycle of tinnitus. And how to break that down, how to break the cycle, how to use different techniques, how to use the sound therapy. And just, he went through the little stages, which is stage one, you feel like it's all encompassing, surrounding you 100% of the time. And then you start having little moments where you start noticing little breaks away in the tinnitus and start realizing that, okay, things are changing. I think that's when Steve would email me like, okay, it's a different sound. Now what? And then we get to stage 3 where you start noticing longer breaks where like, wow, I've had a couple days where I've been feeling good and haven't had that reaction. And it's kind of like, I always say this bunny hopping down the hill. He probably didn't recognize that analogy of where, you're kind of going up and down, but you're always making forward progress to the end goal. And finally in stage 4, where you have an emotional acceptance to your tinnitus, you might hear it, it might still be there, but now you don't have those physical reactions of the tummy upset, the sweaty palms. You have an emotional acceptance to it and say, I have this, but I'm not going to let it have power over me. I'm moving on. And a lot of times the perception of the volume does change when you have that acceptance. So we kind of went through all 4 stages together.
Yeah, that's a great point about the bunny hop down. It's true. You take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and I would get upset about that. But hearing Suzanne explain, it's not a straight level down. It takes time, and you will experience good days, bad days. And quite honestly, I have mornings where it's not there at all, and it's so calm. And then I have times where late in the day, if I don't sleep enough, or sometimes I'm exposed to loud sounds, it's more prevalent again. And I know it has that ability to do that. But even when that happens now, when that happens, I know when I wake up, or I know it's going to come back down to that baseline level where it's just normal, and where it's barely, in my consciousness, right? And I want to just, tell everybody, I was really bad. It was really, really bad. I would wake up in the middle of the night, which you mentioned, sweating palms and sweat. I would have night sweats, and my heart would race like crazy. And I was just in a very bad place. I'm not a very big person. I lost like 30 pounds, and I was very, very skinny when I slowly gained weight back during the course of Suzanne was seeing me. I guess maybe that kind of correlated with my improvement. I was getting heavier again. And so it was very bad for me. But just knowing that how I am today, it's not a big deal. It's not really a big deal in my life. On all the things that are to worry about, it's way, way down there. And it's hard. I wouldn't believe that was possible, to be honest with you. When this first happened to me, I thought it was going to be, this is the way my life is going to be forever, and it's going to change forever. It changed temporarily until your brain realizes and figures things out, and that habituation process takes hold. And it will happen. You just need to understand and be patient with yourself, because I'm not a patient person, and that was the other thing. I want to be better tomorrow, but I think that's an important message there.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Let's go through some lightning round questions. First question, Steve, curious, how valuable were the tinnitus maskers? Did they completely distract you from the tinnitus sound all the time? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so they were very, very helpful, and that was part of like getting over the fear, and having those. It's kind of like just a safe place for me. I would have them set up with an audiologist, local audiologist here, and program them to be in the right zone, the right range, so that I could still kind of hear my tinnitus, but it would mask a little bit. And just having those on just allowed me to just think of other things. And I have birds or crickets, and I feel like I would just take long walks, and I would listen to those things, and I would allow my mind to think of other things. And that really helped. It really was, a way to get over that hump of not constantly focusing on that sound, allowing the sound therapy to mix it up so that you're able to think of other things. It's just normal. You're just walking in the street, and there's birds chirping, or there's crickets, and that you really have to kind of force yourself to do that. I'm going to trick your brain, really. You have to kind of, that's what you're doing. You're tricking your brain. And that the sound therapy played a large role in that. And but it didn't last that long. I mean, I had the sound ear generators. I still have them in months. I really don't need them anymore. So keep that in mind too.
Thank you, Steve. Next question. Steve, how long did it take for your tinnitus and for things to calm down? This is referring to that initial really intense period where sleep, weight loss, all that you spoke about was affected? How much time did it take?
Yeah, a good like 3.5 months, 4 months before I started experiencing those breakthroughs where it was not noticeable anymore. And so that was a period for me. And then I would experience that, but then, it wasn't just better from that point on. It was up and down, but just little by little experiencing those breakthroughs and then getting the confidence that I will be better, that the stories I'm hearing are true, and that what Suzanne's been telling me for all this time is true. Having experienced that happened around 100 and about 4 months into the process.
Thank you. All right. This is a question which is, I think, very relevant for us three, but particularly with Steve's background as a pharmacist. What are your thoughts on bioflavonoids? These are herbal supplements and pills that are not prescription pills. They're over the counter and they're sold for tinnitus. What are your thoughts on bioflavonoids?
Well, I mean, it's not going to hurt you. I don't think it's going to hurt you. I actually took a lot of vitamin B complex, because it's good for nerves. I actually take magnesium, which is also good for helping me relax. And that's part of like that process of just calming your body down. I don't think there's a cure-all over the counter that's going to work for shutting the sound down, but it's not going to be harmful to you, I wouldn't say. But I wouldn't go down expecting to have a cure through that way. Use it more as a supplement to help overall being healthier. I think the vitamins were beneficial to me just from entrusting that it's good to have the vitamins in my system,
Yeah. All right. Thank you. How did the process go of getting help with tinnitus without having an in-person, one-on-one real life interaction with Suzanne or with our team? How did that process go?
Well, I mean, we're on Zoom now, and our classes took place on Zoom. And so it's just as if this is a new world, how we experience. I work from home now for the most part, so this is how a daily life is, and to me, it's just as effective. I did see local audiologists who helped me with the ear level sound generator, so I did have that person-to-person contact. But even if I didn't, I mean, Suzanne, I texted Suzanne as well, and she responded that way. To me, it was very effective.
This is for Suzanne as well. So I assume once you have chronic tinnitus, there's no chance it just leaves. Instead, everyone has to habituate. So weird that there are not different cases where it just leaves. Suzanne, I'll pitch that one to you.
So in my 20 years of doing this, there have been a few cases I've seen when I worked at the VA where I had patients tell me they didn't perceive the tinnitus anymore, that it felt kind of like behind a door. And like Steve, I have days where it certainly feels like that to me, where my tinnitus is just, I don't hear it. And there are other days where it's there and it just doesn't bother me. So I have had that reported. I would say that it's more of a rarity than the norm. Usually you're hearing the tinnitus, but it's almost like my laptop fan. Like I hear it, but I don't even care about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can add too much to that, but I would say, like, if, where you perceive the noise is at a certain level, over time, it does get softer. And so it may get so soft that it's below that level of awareness. And that could be just as I don't really experience it anymore.
Here's a great question. And before I ask this, Steve, what were the results of your hearing test? Do you have good hearing, normal hearing, some hearing loss?
Yeah. So I have really, really good hearing. It turns out I have hearing of like a 30-year-old, which is a lot younger than I am. So that was really good to know. However, I went to the audiologist who specialized in tinnitus locally here, and I found out that there was a dip in the very high extended frequency levels around like 12,000. There's a dip in one. So that's, there is some issue there in terms of that extended high frequency range, which, that's.
Yeah. So I'd like to just ask one last time, Steve, what are your final words of encouragement and advice here for all of our listeners who are here to learn from you?
I would just reiterate again that have confidence that you will get better. Yeah, because you will. I mean, I've experienced that, and all the folks that I relied on to hear the positive stories that they had to tell, either through your videos or others, I believed them. And then I started to experience it myself, and just know that you will get better. And however you feel today just is not the same way it's going to be. I remember saying, how I hear it now is that way it's going to sound in a few years from now. It won't. And it's true. It was actually a few months later, and it's not the same. It's really better. So stay positive, be confident that in time your brain will correct itself, if you will correct that. But you have to do the best job that you can do is just stay calm and know that it will get better, and try to best to distract your brain, distract your mind, and do things that you love, do things that you enjoy, and just say, oh, it's there now, but it'll get better later, because it will.
Living with tinnitus can be incredibly challenging. The constant ringing in your ears and the frustration of not finding relief. Hi, it's Dr. Ben Thompson, founder of Treble Health. Back in 2020, I started this YouTube channel because there were so many people who were struggling to find help for their tinnitus. As the channel grew, I decided to offer tinnitus solutions directly to patients, all from the comfort of home via telehealth. Today, our team at Treble Health is recognized as the nation's leader in tinnitus care. I'd like to introduce the Tinnitus Relief Bundle by Treble Health. Our bundle is backed by science and designed to provide long-lasting relief from tinnitus.
I feel like Treble Health literally gave me my life back. I was questioning my entire future and what it would be like, and now I no longer question that at all.
Imagine getting back to living a full and productive life. Treble Health's Tinnitus Relief Bundle can help you find the relief you've been searching for. Visit our website at treblehealth.com/bundle to learn more and start your journey towards tinnitus relief today with a risk-free trial. Plus, mention that you came from YouTube and you'll get our top-rated tinnitus sound machine for free. Treble Health. Relief from tinnitus starts here. So up next, we have a special topic of managing tinnitus, which can be partly somatosensory, as well as multi-causes of tinnitus that lead to some complexity, however, still finding relief through that. If you could please introduce yourself and give a quick backstory of where you are today and where you were when you found us at Treble Health.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Tamara. I'll start with the beginning. I'll start with the beginning. I found out that I was suffering from tinnitus in March of 2022. I later found out that it was related to a head trauma that I had received. And the first couple of months were really rough, just kind of figuring out what exactly it was, if there was a treatment, if there was a cure, and then trying to find help. And I came across Treble Health, I believe in either the end of March or the beginning of April, got paired up with an audiologist, and then I began my journey of habituation. I'm now a year in, and I'm definitely not where I want to be yet, but I am way better than I was in the beginning. Just to give you an idea, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think when I started, I was probably at a 9 or 10 out of 10. And now on an average day, I say I'm sitting somewhere around a 5.
Thank you, Tamara. And I'd also like to introduce Dr. Tracy Peck Holcomb. Tracy, tell us about your role in Tamara's journey with tinnitus.
Well, Tamara is like one of my favorite patients. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but she has just, this process. There are times when things move really fast and you make huge leaps and huge progress, and that's super motivating. And then there are times when it's not as fast and you feel like, okay, what's going on? And so, Tamara, the work that we do is very collaborative. It's a partnership. You're constantly trying to kind of modify and change things and adapt things depending on where the patients are at and what might be going on. There's so many variables involved in how bothersome or not bothersome tinnitus can be on any given day, week, or month. And I think Tamara's down for anything. So it's down to try different things, down to, and I think that back and forth and working so well together, it's been so great to work with her and see her progress so far and know that she's going to get where she ultimately wants to be. So, yeah.
All right. So let's have you all talk about what were the causes, what were the different factors involved, because we know that not all tinnitus is the same. And there's hundreds of people who will watch this who want to know, okay, Tamara's story is inspiring. Does it relate to me? Am I similar? Can what she used be helpful for me? So could you all comment on some of the different causes or the different factors involved in why you have tinnitus, Tamara, and other things that were going on?
Well, I mean, speaking just for myself, I think that because I did have that pretty hard blow to the head, I learned that my tinnitus is somatosensory. So it's connected to, the musculoskeletal system. And there are definitely stressors, physical stressors that make it worse, whether it's muscular pain, whether it's bad posture, whether it's stress, those types of things really affect my tinnitus in a big way.
Yeah, I was going to say that addressing that piece and having that be part of Tamara's sort of treatment approach. So in addition to obviously the sound therapy and the counseling and stress reduction and all the other things we do, for her, a big part, especially in the beginning, was addressing tension, tightness, pain in the jaw, in the neck, in the upper shoulders, and noticing kind of the trends with that when things were really consistent and regular with addressing those things, how that affected overall the tinnitus in itself. And doing those things consistently, I think, made a big difference, especially in the first few months, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So with that context in mind, Tamara, what were the tools that you used that provided some relief at the beginning? And then tell us about how those tools evolved, or how you got better over time by using tools, and whether that be physical actual tools, devices, or more strategies.
Yeah, I think it was kind of multi-layered. Like, addressing the physical part was probably the easiest part, because you can go get a massage, or you can go take a walk. You can change your mattress to, support your posture. Once you figure out the physical part, it's the other parts, I think, that take a little bit more work. Decreasing stress, that's always going to be extremely difficult. Like, everybody has stress in their life, whether it's big or small. That's really difficult to try to remove that element completely. And then I think the big piece was the sound therapy, getting my maskers. I think when I started using the sound therapy, that's when I made the biggest jump in improvement. Having the maskers in all the time, my brain just started to adjust differently. So when you add all of those things together, using the maskers, having constant sound therapy, addressing my body issues, which I did through massage, through chiropractic adjustments, and then just trying to decrease my overall stress level. Having to do all of those things at once is a lot, but if you don't do all of those things, you're not gonna get the results that you want. So you kind of just have to do everything, and like all of it all at once.
And tell us about which of those tools provided some immediate relief versus which of those tools maybe brought up feelings of, I don't know if this is going to work for me, but I'm just going to keep trying at it. And then eventually you realize, oh, wow, that was useful.
Well, in the beginning, you kind of just throw everything at it until you find something that sticks. So I did acupuncture, like traditional acupuncture, which I no longer do. I did cranial sacrotherapy, which I no longer do, because I just found that those things were not working for me. But the things that did stick were having regular massages and doing chiropractic adjustments. Those things I still do till this day. And I do notice the days that I have treatment, sometimes my tinnitus will change after the treatment and become a little bit easier to manage. And then the maskers are a staple. I barely ever take them out. I have them in all the time. So sound therapy is the biggest key, consistent sound therapy.
And Dr. Tracy, what are your thoughts on the different tools that were beneficial? And maybe was there some trial and error in terms of, okay, let's try this, let's analyze the results. Tell us about your perspective.
Yeah, I think, the initial fitting of the devices, her tinnitus maskers, getting that sound therapy going, getting that initial relief, like kicking the process off, taking the edge off of just allowing to be able to like take that deep breath and have a little bit of relief, that gives you the bandwidth to be able to then try other things. And yes, it's definitely trial and error. What works for someone in terms of the stress reduction piece of it, the cognitive behavioral piece of it, the improving sleep, like what strategies work for one person might not work for another. So there is a little bit of trial and error in putting together like the plan for each patient and what's going to work. And then it's just a matter of, once you figure those things out, it's doing it consistently. And I think consistency is like one of the key words with all of this. And so, once you have your sort of list of things that help, doing them regularly, keeping that going is what's going to yield the best results, and being flexible enough to know that that list will change over time too.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think one thing that you just said that was really important was once you get the relief that the sound therapy provides, then you can tackle all of those other things that are super hard to do when you don't have the relief. When you have this screaming noise in your ear, you can't do cognitive behavioral therapy. You can't swallow any of the work because you're so agitated. But once you get the sound therapy going consistently and you feel like you can take a breath, then you can tackle the actual work.
We have a question about sound therapy. Tamara, did you keep your maskers in even if your tinnitus was low? And then a second question there for Tracy, which is, should someone be wearing the tinnitus maskers all the time, or until what point should they stop wearing them?
Okay, well, it is difficult when I'm having days that the sound is not super obnoxious and it's really low. You don't want to have them in because you want to enjoy, the time that you're not hearing this noise, but you have to stay consistent. Even when it's low, you have to keep your sound therapy on and just put it at a lower volume. One thing that worked for me was, instead of having the pink noise from the maskers, on the days that it's really good and I don't feel like having the pink noise, I just put instrumental music on super, super low. Because one thing that you don't want to happen is to start getting agitated by your sound therapy, because then that's just doing the opposite of what you want it to do. So I changed up and I put some really soft music on the days that it's good. That way I can still keep my maskers in on the days that it's really good.
Mara has it down, man. She's got it. She knows what to do. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, basically she just said exactly what I was going to say, which is you do want to still use your sound therapy, even on days where, your tinnitus is really low, which you will have those days, and you want to still get some sound therapy in, but you can change it up, right? It's changing it up to a different type of sound that's more pleasant, maybe more just kind of something that you're using that you really enjoy listening to. But you do want that consistency even on those good days, because we really want to, facilitate that long-term habituation. And if you're up and down with it, then your brain, you never get into that kind of pattern. So you don't have to necessarily do as many hours. You don't necessarily have to use your primary sound, but you still want to get sound therapy in every day.
All right, let's now ask Tamara a more general question of, for others in a similar place as you were, what is your advice? Because we know some people listening and watching are currently in a place where you were, where you needed help and you got that help. What is your advice to others in terms of things they can try, mental strategies, and just the motivation as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really tough place to be in. And it's really hard to take advice when you're in that place, because it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. All you are taking in is that feeling that you're scared, you're frightened, you're annoyed, you don't know what's happening. But all I can say is, you are going, even as you get better, and you will get better, there are going to be back and forths. You're going to have great days and you're going to have some rough days. I still have some rough days, but when you have those good days, I just tell myself, this is what it's going to be like. Eventually, all of my days are going to be like this. If I'm experiencing this really good day where it's like a 2 out of 10, that's where we're headed. That is the benchmark. That's where we're going. It's not going to stay where you're at if you do all of the things that you're supposed to do. If you do your cognitive behavioral therapy, if you do your sound therapy, that needle is going to continue to move. So take those good days as a flashlight that's moving you towards that tunnel. Like, you are going to get there. You're not going to be stuck in that dark place forever. It will move. You just have to put the work in.
And what kind of encouragement would you have for someone who maybe has experienced some relief? Maybe they're feeling 20% better, but they're not at their resolution. They're not where they want to be. And maybe you're in that type of middle ground right now. But what kind of encouragement do you have, or perspective do you have for that stage?
It's hard, because as much as I feel like I've got it, there are days where I don't got it. And I think it's okay to have those days. It's okay to feel sorry for yourself and to have your feelings. But once you're through, pick yourself up and just keep going. You've already experienced relief, so you know that it's possible. So know that where you're at, it's still possible to experience more relief. So I think for me, I try to find things that help me focus on something other than my tinnitus, because it is consuming. It can consume you, and it can make you feel like you don't want to go outside, or you don't want to hang out with your friends, or you don't want to go to work, or whatever it is. But go outside and take a walk. Find a hobby that you can focus on. Paint by numbers. Get a coloring book. Go, get a jump rope. Do whatever. Do something that will help you focus on something other than the tinnitus. That's all, that's all you can do, because it's not going to disappear in the snap of a finger. You got to find a coping mechanism.
Love that. Dr. Tracy, jump in here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think just the two key things that she hit on that are so important is to allow yourself on the days where you're having a tough day, or a day that, isn't as, great as a lot of the days are in the later stages of this, that it's okay to acknowledge that that's a tough day. And, there are better days coming, and you have strategies that you can use that can help you manage through that day. And then I think the second thing is that and in the later stages, I think what's really helpful is to engage in activities that direct your attention and shift your attention elsewhere. It's because we know the brain can only pay attention to so many things at one time. So if we are having a tougher day with it, we know there's going to be ups and downs, even in the later stages, right? We're looking at this from a bird's eye view. We're looking at this from the big picture. We know there's better days overall than tough days. And on the days where it's tough, it's about, implementing strategies, engaging in activities that are going to shift your attention and focus away from the signal, which helps overall promote that positive neuroplasticity that we're looking for. And when you do that consistently and proactively, before you get super annoyed, before you get super frustrated, what that does is it takes the edge off of the tinnitus. It takes your attention away from it. And it's really helpful in kind of moving through those days. I think, giving the brain something else to focus on, not letting ourselves sort of sit in that space where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated by this, right? Because all that does is negatively reinforce to the brain that we need to continue to pay attention to the tinnitus. So I think in the later stages, it becomes more about directed attention, shifted attention. And we were talking the other day, and so many patients of mine have talked about how the weather's getting warmer. Now we can kind of get outside, get some sunshine, do things, which we know helps too. So summertime's, a good time.
I just want to say one thing. When you have an invisible disability that people can't see, sometimes we tend to put a face on. You don't want people to know that you're hurting, or that you're in pain, or that you're upset. You put a face on and you hold everything in. One thing that I have learned is to stop putting that face on. If I need help, ask for help. If you have friends, lean on them. If you have family, lean on them, because the more help that you get, the more you're going to be able to take care of yourself. So stop putting that face on, because people can't see tinnitus. They don't know if I'm hurting. I might be smiling, but I'm in pain. So lean on the people around you, because you need to be able to take care of yourself. So just lean on the people around you so that you have some support. As you get better, as you get up and start getting out, and you stop saying no to invitations, and you start getting up and out again, people kind of assume that you're just okay. And if you're not okay, it's okay to say that you're not okay and to ask for help.
Dr. Tracy, any thoughts or words of encouragement here for others who are in a similar position as Tamara was?
Well, just to piggyback off what she said, I think this is not as well known in tinnitus, and kind of some of the stuff that you'll see online is that fluctuations in not only just the volume, so that's talked about a lot. I'd say that's a pretty common thing, but changes also in the types of sounds that you hear, especially as you go through the stages, it changes. Tinnitus shifts in what it sounds like, the sounds you have, where you locate it, the quality of the sounds, all of that fluctuates, and it's completely normal and part of the process. And in general, a positive sign that, you know, we're reaching the areas of the auditory cortex that we need. We're making changes. There's shifts happening. Sometimes we don't love the shifts as much as others, but that it's normal, and it's not an indication that anything bad is happening. It's part of the process. I think that's something that is not as well known. And so when things change, the initial reaction typically is worry or concern. And like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm regressing? Does that mean I'm, you know, having a setback? And that's not the case at all. And so I think being prepared and knowing that ahead of time, and framing it that way helps to make it less scary. And then it's about using the tools that you have, right, to be able to get that relief, and have it not be as, you know, irritating. But yeah, it's a process, right, Tamara? It's a process.
It's definitely a process.
Talk to us about some last words of encouragement for where you are today. And again, a big thank you for joining us.
I think I need some words of encouragement sometimes, but I mean, listen, it took me a long time to realize that this was something that I was going to have to work through. I wish that I could snap my fingers and that it would be gone, but that's not going to happen. So the only thing that I can do is whatever is in my power to push my habituation forward. I came across, like, not too long ago, I felt like I was stuck, like the noise wasn't moving. It was consistently kind of plateauing. And Tracy suggested, let's start over from the beginning with your CBT. Do all the things that we were doing in the beginning. Go back to your meditation. Go back to all the things you did in the beginning to calm it down. And maybe that will jumpstart it again. And that's exactly what we did. And then it started to move again. So all I can say is put the work in and you'll get the results. I know that when you're feeling down and the tinnitus is bothersome, the last thing you want to do is put the work in, but you have to put the work in because you don't want to be in this place forever. You want to habituate, you want to get to stage 4. So put your work in and you'll get there. I'm hopeful that I will get there. So, you know, just pat yourself on the back for what you've done and just keep going.
All right. Next up, right on time, we have James as well as Dr. Sarah Matthews. And in this particular conversation, this particular presentation here, we will talk about tinnitus retraining therapy in practice. So let's start off. James, could you please give us some introduction into where you are today and where you were when you started working with us at Treble Health?
Sure. Well, where I am today is a much, much better place than I was when I came to Treble Health in October, the first week in October, actually. My tinnitus on a scale of 1 to 10 was probably a 7 to 8. I was demoralized. I felt that I had lost my quality of life. It was annoying. It was frustrating. It was all those things. And as Tamara said, I put on a face and, you know, and forged ahead. And I had already seen Dr. Ben. The first video that I saw of Treble Health was Dr. Ben talking about tinnitus, stress in the limbic system. And it fascinated me. It was the first thing that I had ever seen that really educated me on what was happening to me. My perception of tinnitus was causing a negative reaction. It was sent to the limbic system as a package of stress and anxiety, and the amygdala, the fight or flight response, was kicking in, and then it was making the tinnitus even louder. So I felt like, aha, I know what's going on now. So I started watching more and more Treble Health videos and getting more educated, and finally came to the point where I contacted Dr. Sarah for an appointment, and it was upward from there. Where I am now is I think it's exceeded my expectations. Actually, I was somewhat skeptical at the beginning that TRT, tinnitus retraining therapy, could actually do what it's done for me, and I think that it's a bit magical, really, to watch it unfold, because a lot of things happen. Your brain actually does things at a subconscious level. Once you habituate to your reactions, your negative reactions, the rest of it's automatic. And that's what's so incredible about it. And that's what's happened to me. Right now, the sound that I'm hearing is between, I would say, usually between a 1 and a 3. And I've had a lot of days, and I took Tamara's advice in her video. She said she likes to go through her calendar and put down numbers for different days on her, volume. Well, I put down GR for great, G for good, G plus if it's a little bit better than that. I started noticing that about a month and a half to 2 months in, I was seeing a lot more GRs, Gs, and 3 things were happening. And this is what was fascinating to me, really. Number one, the fluctuations or spikes. Dr. Sarah doesn't like me to say spikes. I like to say spikes, but I'll say fluctuation to please her. And it is better, actually, to do it that way. But I stopped having as many fluctuations. The fluctuations that I did have were far less severe. And the volume actually started going down. And that's the part that astonished me, because I really did not expect that to happen. I had heard, well, you'll have changes, and yes, you'll learn to not let it bother you so much. But as far as the volume going down, no, that's kind of a Candyland. That's a fantasy. So, forget that. But it's happened for me. I'm here to tell you. And I think if you follow the tinnitus retraining therapy guidelines, if you do consistent sound therapy, and I mean 12 to 16 hours a day is what I do. I put them on as soon as I get up. After I'm out of the shower, I wear them till I go to bed, most days. Now, I've had some days where I've had some sound sensitivity, and I can't wear them that long. And I think, Dr. Sarah told me not to white knuckle it on those days. And I've been doing some protocols for some sound sensitivity issues, but those have gotten better. Those have gotten better along with the tinnitus. So I'm in a great place today. And I think tinnitus retraining therapy has been it's been a revelation for me. And I know that it's really what's brought about the changes that I see, that and phenomenal audiologists.
James, let's bring in your audiologist that you worked with on our team, Dr. Sarah Matthews. Sarah, what kind of history or background that James had is fairly representative of other patients that you see?
I think some of the consistent things that I see across the board is that when he started with us, James was stage 1, stage 2 of habituation. And that's where the majority of our patients are when they start with us. And James was also very motivated, which most stage 1 and stage 2 patients are, because this is affecting your entire life. I also think that one of the common things that we don't talk a lot about is that he had some pulsatile tinnitus. And there's this huge misunderstanding in the tinnitus community that tinnitus retraining therapy, sound therapy can't help with pulsatile tinnitus. So it's not the most common thing we see, but it's really common that we see pulsatile tinnitus patients. And one of the things that I, as a clinician, missed in the beginning was the sound sensitivity piece. And I think that was there from the beginning. And that's very common for us to see is patients coming in with all of this and then an overlay of some sound sensitivity as well. I think some of the things that were a little different, I'm also going to take this in a different direction. James is a very knowledgeable person, which most of our tinnitus patients are. We know as tinnitus patients, we dive in and we research and we try to figure out what's going on and where do I get help? And the answer of there's nothing that can be done does not sit well with us. So we try to figure it out. By the time James got to me, he'd already read Dr. Jastrovoff's book. And that's a little different than most patients. And I love it because he keeps me on my toes. When we talk about something, I know that he knows what we're talking about. And I know when we start to talk about particular protocols or processes or activities, he already has that underlying foundation of information. And when I do something that's off of protocol, he knows. And we talk about why are we going to do this little thing different, or what can we do that brings us back to staying on target with things, because he put in that effort to read the TRT book.
Excellent. And for those who don't know, Dr. Jastrovoff is the founder of Tinnitus Retraining Therapy. There is a book available that he wrote that is available for patients to read, and it's often complementary to what we do. Here we go, a nice plug for the book. And James, let's ask you some questions here. Let's go straight into it. talk to us about the tools that you used. Let's start with sound therapy. For those who are fairly new or don't have much introduction to it, what is sound therapy? How do you use it? And what has it done for you?
Sound therapy was really key in all this. And I'll qualify that by saying, and Dr. Sarah and I have talked about this too, but you can slap ear level sound generators on anyone, but without the teaching and the counseling piece, you probably won't get very far if you don't understand what's going on. And Dr. Jastreboff said that in his book, actually. And so sound therapy to me, first of all, is getting even a little bit of relief from that sound that you're hearing, like Tamara said, so that you're freed up to pursue habituation. You can't really, if you have a jet engine in your head, as I have said sometimes when I wake up from a nap, that's how I feel. I hear that jet engine sound, not so much anymore, but if you have that sound going on and you don't have any relief from it, it's very challenging to move forward. So sound therapy was very important to me. As soon as I talked to Dr. Sarah, I realized I needed the ear level sound generators to really move forward at the pace that I wanted to. So I ordered those, and they've been fantastic. I didn't have a hearing loss per se, really. In fact, my hearing test that I sent to Dr. Sarah showed no hearing loss at all. I had a prior one about, it was in December of 21 that showed mild hearing loss at upper frequencies, but for some reason I didn't have it in the most recent one. So I got the maskers, the ear level sound generators. And you really, with the pink noise, and I believe pink noise is where the spectrum, every sound on this frequency on the spectrum is equal. Is that right? As opposed to white noise, where the white noise has more upper register. The pink noise to me is really hard to detect. Once I set it in the morning, I set it and I forget it for the whole day. I wake up and my volume that day, and I never know what I'm going to get, so my volume that day might be a 3. Well, I still use the sound therapy, only I'm going to put it a notch or two lower than I usually do, so I can still hear the tinnitus signal, but I can hear the sound therapy as well. And that's what I always do. You always want to set your sound therapy right below the threshold at which it starts to partially mask your tinnitus, because your brain has to hear that tinnitus signal as well as the sound therapy in order to make the comparison. And the brain is jury. It has to get that evidence that the tinnitus is no longer bothersome and shouldn't be treated as important. And then the brain will refile it. And I think that's what's happened in my case. It's refiled the tinnitus in a place where it's not only lower volume now, but it doesn't upset me. I've had a few days where, like I said, I'd wake up from a nap and hear a jet engine in my head. Doesn't bother me in the least. I identified with a video that I saw. A musician named Isabel Anderson said that she went through the treatment, TRT, I believe, and she said, somebody asked me if they'd like me to, turn the switch off. I'd say, if you want to, that's fine, but don't have to. That's the way I'd like to be ultimately. I still get a little annoyed at times, but I'm almost to the point where I feel that I'm closing in on stage 4. I mean, I've graduated for all intents and purposes because I don't get upset anymore. It doesn't have a big impact on my life like it did in the beginning. And I feel like, yes, I have times when I notice it more and times when it flares up, but I can deal with all of those things. And in the very beginning, I had some really, really dark days. I won't trigger anyone. Wouldn't ever want to do that, but trust me, they were bad. I think we've all been there.
James, thank you so much. And we can hear your authenticity and your willingness to share from a vulnerable place here. And I know personally, after speaking with you multiple times, that you found the value in this protocol, this system, tinnitus retraining therapy, and you want to educate others. So what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about it for those who may have heard of it, or even for those who don't know anything about it? What do you think are the misconceptions in the world of tinnitus?
Tinnitus itself or TRT?
Let's start with tinnitus retraining therapy. And then we can also comment just on things that people might get wrong with tinnitus, false beliefs that you may have had earlier that now you have a different perspective on.
Sure. I think as far as TRT goes, I've heard people say it's hocus pocus. I've heard people say it's just a delay for real treatment, whatever real treatment is, because there are so many types of tinnitus that you would have to find a cure for. There's not one cure. And I've also heard it said that you'll get addicted to sound therapy. And that certainly isn't true. Once you are habituated, you're not really going to have a need to slap those ear level sound generators on, unless you have a point in the future when you have a fluctuation or something. But I think those are all misconceptions. People don't really understand neuroplasticity, and it's a fascinating thing to watch unfold. At least it has been for me, and to hear from other people on Treble Health who have talked about their experiences. But it's not magic. It's not hocus pocus. It's simply new neurons forming as the brain relearns about tinnitus, that it's not a threat anymore, and new neural pathways are forming, and great things start to happen. You start to notice, you start to not notice it, is what happens. You do notice a reduction, definitely, but I think people don't realize how real and how powerful neuroplasticity really is. So that's what I would say about TRT. About tinnitus itself, it's all in your head. You can just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get over it. I have floaters in my eyes. I have for 30 years. Why can't you listen to a little ringing? Things like that. And it is true that a lot of people are not bothered by tinnitus. I wish that were the case with me. And I don't know what the percentage is, but I know a lot of people just don't ever get bothered by it. So I think the conception that it's all in your head, or that it's a psychological problem, that I've heard that too, that it's a psychiatric disorder, that it can be treated with eardrops, garlic, things like that. I have no patience with all those things. And I just loved the video clip that you did. It was a quick one on bogus medications for tinnitus, because there are a lot of them out there. But yeah, tinnitus, it's the woman whose family didn't understand one night in group therapy, who didn't understand her problem with tinnitus, her bothersome tinnitus, really got me right here, because you had to feel for this woman. She was coming from a place of just desolation, because she really didn't have anybody at home that understood what she was going through. And at the same time, you can see how the family, none of whom had tinnitus, would be frustrated at the condition and not really know what was going on. And I think that's where educating yourself comes in. We need to keep reading. As we progress through the TRT process, we need to keep reading, keep learning, and that's what I'm doing. I stay away from the boards, though. Stay away from those boards. They are toxic, toxic, toxic. And, if you can pry yourself away from those and focus on academic literature, books like Glenn Schweitzer that you had on, those are interesting. Things like that. Keep reading, keep learning. Watch Treble Health videos. They're so educational and they're so inspirational.
Thank you,
Thank
James.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you had shared some tools, mainly sound therapy, working with Dr. Sarah.
My speaker.
Your speaker.
At night.
And you mentioned ear level sound generators, which we also call tinnitus maskers, and
yes.
they can also be called hearing aids for tinnitus, but making sure those are programmed according to the tinnitus retraining therapy protocol. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that those tools were helpful, as well as the education, learning about this system, taking any what ifs or fears or anxieties out of the equation, and knowing the system, how it works and how to follow it. So those are the tools. I summarized those. We're now going to transition into some advice and then finally some words of encouragement. So we have some questions coming in. Here's the first question. James, how long did it take you to get from stage 1, the most intense stage of tinnitus, until where you are now? Let's start there.
I believe, and I'll have to defer to Dr. Sarah here, because I was in stage 2 for quite a while, even though I was doing really well. But I took the tinnitus functional index equivalent, and I had gone from a 68 to maybe a 28 or something like that within 3 months, maybe a little more. Maybe it was October, November, December, January. It was 3 months. It was about 3 months. It was fairly speedy, and I had a concern because I had been tapering off of benzos. I was prescribed clonazepam early in the process to help me deal with the tinnitus while I was going back and forth to Colorado, taking care of my dad's business after he died. And I really got a lot of relief from it for the first 5 or 6 months, but I shouldn't have been on it that long. And, it stopped working, and then I had to taper off of it. And I know Dr. Jastroboff has said that it can interfere with your brain relearning. In my case, I was taking such a small dose that it really didn't that much, but I was really sensitive to it. And I've told Dr. Sarah, every time we've made a cut, I've had a fluctuation that lasts a week at least, and then it goes away. So you have to be really careful with benzos. That's my unsolicited, not advice, but just kind of from one tinnitus sufferer to another. Be really careful. Talk to your doctor, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. Second question here is for you, James. People say habituated, and you've shown signs of these ongoing stages of relief on the stages of habituation. So not fully habituated, as you've described. Your process here, it's not completely over. We still have more progress that we can get. But how would you describe this ongoing process of more and more habituation to someone who's not too familiar with the term?
I would say that habituation, to me, was reaching the point at which my bothersome tinnitus really didn't bother me too much anymore. And I've really, for all practical purposes, reached that point. I'm in stage 3 solidly, and almost to stage 4. I'm being very cautious here because you don't want to force anything or take anything too fast. But as Dr. Sarah told me and cautioned me at one point, when you get to stage 3, you have to double down. That's where the hard work really begins. You actually don't let up, because if you do, you can backtrack, and I don't want that at this point. So I'm being very careful. But I went from stage 1 to stage 2, sat there for a minute, about 3 months maybe, and then kind of just slid into stage 3. One day I was just kind of amazed that I wasn't upset at the fact that I had a really ugly fluctuation. But I was like, so what? And I'd never done that before. And so I knew that my brain had rewired. I didn't know to what degree, but I knew that the process was working. And I said, thank you, Dr. Jastroboff. and a lot of other people too. So,
absolutely. Dr. Sarah, any input, any pieces of advice here for others who have a similar story as James?
I think the biggest advice is take action. We can help. And that's the thing, is like, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make him drink. So if you've learned all of this and you know that these are options, do it. I've yet to have a patient that really has massive regret over working through tinnitus retraining therapy and having habituation as that end goal. And that's the biggest advice I can say is, let's do it. Let's make life amazing again for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's what the whole thing is taking back your life. I feel that I've been able to do that thanks to Treble Health, and thanks to tinnitus retraining therapy, Dr. Sarah, Dr. Ben. You all care. And one thing that was really telling, and I have to say this, and I hope a lot of people are listening, is that Dr. Ben has had on people like Cliff Olson, Julian Cowan-Hill, Ed Farrer, Gary, I'm trying to remember all the names, but some of them are competitors. And he has these people on because he wants to collaborate with them to share information and help people suffering from tinnitus. That is the ultimate the ultimate sign to me that Treble Health is in the right place as far as the tinnitus community. And I think it's the best resource out there.
Really appreciate that, James. I want to kick it to you here. We have a few minutes here for you to share your words of encouragement. You've already shared a lot of encouragement, but we can't get enough of it. Final words of encouragement for others who are listening.
If you're suffering from tinnitus and you are at a point where you feel like you want to throw in the towel and just live with it, don't. Do what Dr. Sarah said. Take action. There's plenty to do for tinnitus. Don't listen to so-called professionals that tell you there's nothing that can be done. These people are possibly well-meaning, but they're not well-trained. And I ran into quite a few of them. I saw a variety of doctors, a smorgasbord of them, really, and was totally demoralized. And I really believed what they said, that I would just have to live with it. Part of me did. Part of me said, no, I've got to find a solution. I know there's one out there. So I'm glad that I did this, that I did take action. It wasn't easy, but help is out there. You can do something for tinnitus. You can get your life back. And I think once you start the process and you start getting better, you have to be consistent. You have to be mindful, and you have to be positive. Stay positive, because as other people have said, it's not a linear process. You take 2 steps forward and you take a step back. And it's like a roller coaster ride. It's kind of a cruel process in a way, because you get really elated at where you are, and then bam, you're back where you were a month ago. But it's not going to be as long this time. It's going to be, increments, and you're going to notice little changes, and it's going to happen. So stay away from the naysayers, stay away from the boards, do something about your tinnitus today. Do something. There's help out there. I don't know how else to say that, but don't just be miserable. You can take back your life. I did.
This is a short interruption from today's video to announce the tinnitus quiz. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you or someone you know has tinnitus. We know how much tinnitus can impact your daily life, and we're here to help. Visit tinnitusquiz.com and take a 2-minute quiz to receive personalized treatment plans that have helped hundreds of people learn to manage their tinnitus. Start now at tinnitusquiz.com. So let's start, Melinda, by please give us a summary of where you are today and where you were when you needed help from our team.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So I am at a 2 out of 10 now. I started at a 9 out of 10. I'm 7 months, about 6.5 to 7 months into tinnitus retraining therapy with the maskers. Do you want more than that, Ben? I'm sorry. That's kind of the quick summary, but.
Yeah, give us more details of what were the challenges that came up for you, some context of why this started and what you were going through in those first few months.
Yeah, so I had I don't know how I got it. I had a surgery unrelated to my brain or ears. And so 2 days after that, all of a sudden I was sitting in my living room and I thought there was something wrong with my house. And I was looking around. And then when it dawned on me that it was ear ringing, I started to panic. I had it in both ears. Like I said, I don't know what the reason was, if it was vaccinations or what happened, but it didn't matter at that point because I went into a panic. My husband and children didn't know what was happening. I actually went to the ER twice. I even thought I was having a stroke, and they're like, no, you would not be speaking. But it caught me off guard. And the first 2 months were absolutely miserable. And so my goal was always to help others not have those 2 months of misery. I lost 20 pounds. I couldn't eat. I did eat some, but I had a really hard time eating. I was almost paralyzed to my bedroom, where I felt like I couldn't even move out of my bedroom. I was in panic. I had a hard time even walking around the block. I went on a 6-week wait list for an ENT. That wasn't helpful. He just said strange things happened and sent me away. Didn't do an MRI. He said, I don't think it's going to help you to do an MRI. So that was unhelpful. And I just really spiraling. I had a hard time working, taking care of my kids. I had a hard time driving my car because I could not even focus to drive my vehicle. And so I was really in a dark, dark place. I didn't think there was a future to my life, to be honest.
And we're bringing here into the conversation Dr. Tracy Peck Holcomb, audiologist with Treble Health. Tracy's going to comment here about her perspective of working with Melinda, working one-on-one over multiple sessions, seeing her progress over time. So I want to let you two guide the rest of this conversation here for the next 5 minutes. How did you improve, Melinda? And what kind of tools did you use along the way?
Yeah, I agree with others that I did a little bit of random Google searching, and that was a very bad idea because I only heard negative stories and I got more afraid. And the part I left out is I was required to go on a work trip. I got to the airport and I was in the gate, had an absolute panic attack. I was having rolling panic attacks. I forgot to mention that. I could not get on the plane. So then it got even worse. And I looked up, found Treble Health finally, made a phone call, and I thought, I don't think this is real. And then, but within, someone answered right away, and I got in with Tracy, I think that afternoon. She had an extra 15 minutes and it turned right then. I'll be honest. It was the first time someone had given me hope. The first person that was positive and said, hey, I know you're suffering, because everybody else is kind of like, it's no big deal. Get used to it. You're overreacting, right? And I'm like, no, something's really wrong here. So that's kind of how it started. And then Dr. Tracy and I worked together weekly. She's absolutely amazing, saved my life, and just corrected me in a professional way to change the way I was thinking about the situation. So I can let Dr. Tracy speak now, but I can't tell you, I wish I would have found it earlier, because 2 months of this was too long. 2 months untreated was way too long.
Hi, Melinda.
Hi.
Sorry for jumping in late. I was finishing actually with a patient. So yeah, I mean, I think when we first started, it was that initial session was really about just, which I say a lot of times in those initial sessions, just like, if you're leaving with anything from this call today, I want you to leave with, there are things you can do. There is hope. This can get better, you know? And I think just even planting that seed when patients have been told by many other professionals, there's nothing you can do. You just have to learn to live with it. You know, all of that narrative, which is super dismissive and not helpful when someone is in that state, right? That elevated state of just like complete overwhelm with it. And then from there, yeah, we saw each other weekly, and it was just building. It was building upon each week, you know, little bits at a time. And we fit her with her ear level devices, got that going. And Melinda, what was your experience with that initial sort of getting those on and starting to use those and stuff, especially compared to, because you had tried other devices before, and kind of what the differences were maybe with that, if you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a unique part of my story, because I had found maskers online, but I went into an audiologist and I kind of begged him to order these for me. And he had never used them before for that, just a local audiologist. And so I had only one right ear device, and it was white noise, which now, because it didn't work for me. Some people, maybe it does, but it was not working for me. And so when I started working with Dr. Tracy, I got both ears. And so people know my story. My left ear stopped. Like, I hope that happens to everybody, but my left ear stopped, and then my right ear stayed really intense, but it would move around my brain, especially in the first few weeks. And then that stopped happening. It's actually not even in my ear anymore. It's somewhere in my brain, which is, I can't think about it too much. I'll get a little disturbed or caught up with it. So really unique, but I felt like, nothing against the audiologist, but Tracy's an expert in this, and I trusted her, and I felt like I'm going to follow what she says. So I tried to wear them 24 hours a day, and we can get into the mornings. And so there's certain things I struggled with that she helped me with, but I was very diligent. I had a different sound during the day than at night. We had to tweak it to pink noise, and you were able to adjust it. And then I stopped being so hypersensitive to it. But the first one I had didn't work at all. And it just, the person didn't know how to help me. And it was kind of frustrating, because I spent $3,000 on just the one device. So,
and I think that the reason I wanted to have you just talk about that a little bit is because I think, again, this term sound therapy is thrown around a lot, and you know, just throwing on a random sound for one person, it really is customized. It really is individualized to each person, what the sort of context is around their tinnitus. And even if you only perceive tinnitus in one ear, really, the best practices would be to wear two, because the auditory system is a binaural system. So we know that there's multiple pathways that are involved. We know that if we're stimulating both sides, that maximizes that benefit in the auditory part of the brain to stimulate across the entire part of the system. And then tweaking the protocol and the types of sounds and the volume. Like, we made several adjustments over several months as her tinnitus started to change and get better and get lower. And as the months go on, you have to sort of adjust to the changes, right? And as things are improving. And so that piece, I think, isn't as well understood. So that's a really important piece. And how many times did we connect and be like, all right, I think I can drop it down a little bit more, or the sound has changed. Like, what does that mean? And changing up the sound itself that you use and adding additional sounds. Like it's an ongoing adaptive process for sound therapy, right?
Yeah, and it was so fun because, I don't want to say fun. The first part was really grueling. I mean, this is a gritty process. I'm not going to tell you it's not gritty. It's gritty. You gotta dig deep. But so whenever we would lower it, it was like, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but it was like you passed mile 2, right? And then we get so excited. And then I told Dr. Ben the other day, I didn't even know if I had the app on my phone anymore. Like your brain is amazing, right? So, but yeah, we lowered it 3 times. I'm on the lowest level again now.
Yeah.
But at first though, you were very patient with me because I moved the pink noise around a lot, and then we finally got to a spot. But so thank you for that. But it was a very quick adjustment.
Yeah, and then I think once we sort of got into that, once you got into the routine and you're super consistent, which is the other big key factor, and using the sound therapy, every day, nighttime sound therapy and things like that, then I think we moved on to a lot more of the cognitive behavioral therapy focused kind of techniques and how to deal with the day-to-day, stress and anxiety of it. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe what strategies helped you and what worked as far as that area that's equally important, I think, to the sound therapy itself?
Yeah, it is. And I'll admit I'm very, very type A, very black and white. And so I was probably a tough patient, but I had it set in my head that it was incurable. Well, guess what? There's lots of things in our life that are incurable, but we live great lives, mental health, eyesight, all kinds of addiction, right? We live great lives, even if, so you helped me with the ultimatums I was giving myself and the timeframes I was holding myself to. In the mornings when I woke up, I would get because sometimes my maskers would run out of battery, right? So I would get very depressed the first few months. In the morning, I'd wake up and I'd be like, I can't do this another day. I possibly can't. So you helped me say, hey, it's okay. Get either charge them a different time or get a different sound therapy going. And I got up and right to the gym. And that was okay to say, hey, I'm not going to listen to this right now. I'm going to do something else, because I had to give myself permission that I didn't need to check in on it, but I was hyper checking in and where was it at in my brain? And so I really had to back off, and I was absolutely dead set on I was going to get back to silence. And that's not reality. You do have silence because you're not thinking about it. Right? It's how we think about the terminology. How I thought about the terminology was really big. And then just the flying for work. You told me it's going to be fine. It's probably worse anticipatory. It was totally fine to fly. It was actually better, but I had to trust you and I had to believe you, because I wasn't going to have another panic attack at the airport.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I've flown 5 or 6 times since then. No issue.
Yeah. And I think, but we worked, it was like, that was a goal, right? So it's constantly the goal line is always moving. So as patients are progressing through these stages of habituation, the not only does the tinnitus change, but also what changes is the goals that you're setting, right? So like as we were working together over the course of those months, it was like, okay, this has definitely improved and I'm still struggling with this, or I definitely feel like this has gotten better, but I have this work trip coming up and here are my concerns about that. And working through those using some of the CBT tools, really working on neutral thinking, neutral frame of thought. You mentioned kind of the mornings being a challenging time. And so, coming up with strategies around that, right? Not just sitting in bed ruminating about it, like let's get up and do something and engage in an activity that's positive and helpful, honestly, for stress reduction too. And so it's constantly kind of adapting and like working together. It really is a collaborative process. I think it's a lot of back and forth. And certainly as a provider, we're giving a lot of guidance and coaching and support, but honestly, Melinda did the bulk of the work, like as all patients do. And because she was consistent with that and really like with her type A personality, put in all the time and was super consistent with it. Like she's getting those results, and it wasn't overnight. It's taken probably longer than she wanted to, but has made significant, incredible progress. So I'm super happy to have her sharing her story tonight.
And Melinda, talk to us about your daily habits when you still are in this mindset of, all right, today's a new day. I need to do things. I need to set up certain things to help me with my tinnitus treatment. So what were your daily habits that made the difference here for you?
Yeah. And I forgot to mention, I have the Sound Oasis machine because it doesn't mess with Bluetooth, right? Or your connectivity in your home. It's just on all the time. My remote office here, I work from home. Sound Oasis machine's amazing. Dr. Tracy I have 2 sleep bands, one with earbuds, which is way too loud now. So, but that's okay. It's too intense. And then one, just the band that I think's on the picture. I have those at night. So I did end up getting those. I also had the sleep pillow with the speakers. So once again, I go a little overboard, but I didn't sit in silence, and I would watch a lot of success stories if I was getting down. And then Dr. Ramsey one time had said, I was in a conference and I had to get out and leave the room. And she had said on a call that to listen to a thunderstorm for a little bit, something just to kind of shake it up. But I choose, people would say, oh, I listen to ocean sounds. Well, I don't like the ocean. I live in Minnesota. I just don't like listening to the ocean. So I had to customize it for me. So I do crickets at night, and during the day I listen to forest noises or birds, because that's what I would hear naturally outside once I got through the really intense phase. And so it's a really dynamic process of changing, and you guys helped me through that. But the consistent was I didn't sit in silence. If it ramped up, I tried not to panic, try to distract myself, turn on a new sound or do something different. I'll admit I didn't always follow the protocol that the sound is less than the tinnitus, because maybe for 10, 20 minutes, I would set it a little higher. And that worked for me. And then I would back it down because I just needed a relief in the moment to get my nervous system to calm down. Probably not ideal, but I did change that a little bit.
I think that's totally okay to do too. Yes, you're fine. Yes, it works. Yeah. There's sometimes where you just, you need to kind of reset and kind of shift what's going on in the nervous system and kind of help yourself regulate. And so if that's what it does, that's helpful by turning it up a little bit. That's okay. Right. We talked about that. That's not the general sound therapy implementation. And you knew that. And so it was you also knew, okay, I also need to kind of do this right now for a little bit to just kind of reset. The other thing, Ben, that we did a lot, I think Melinda did a lot, was we celebrated the wins. So whether they seem small or big or anything in between, it's shifting the narrative. It's shifting the focus to wow, today I had, a half a day where I didn't even hear my tinnitus. That's huge, right? And so always constantly trying to point out those victories, those going on that first flight. That's huge. That's a huge win. And focusing on those things really helps to promote the entire habituation process. So yeah, I think you're still doing some of the stress reduction and just kind of the neutral thinking and everything, even now, as well as you're doing. I think there's a lot of things that I have many patients at the end of this that say, I'm going to take a lot of these strategies and techniques and tools that I've learned and continue to apply them because it's helpful with my overall health and well-being. And so there's silver linings. I know that's harder to believe in the beginning of this process, but there are a lot of things that people take away at the end that it's wow, I can continue to do this and it's helpful in this way in my life, even though tinnitus isn't a factor for me anymore. So
Melinda, let's talk more about advice. So some of the common situations patients feel stuck in may have been ones that you previously felt stuck in too. So share some of your top advice, maybe advice to your former self when you were in a more dire situation here.
Yeah, I just, like I said, again, it's staying away from any negativity, even be careful who you tell in your life. You be selective about that. And so it's almost like whatever you feed, if you're going to feed the dark or the light, right? And so I tried to feed the positive with Treble all the time. And I would rewatch videos of success stories, which I mentioned. I had 5 days, I should mention, recently in Florida with in a row, almost unnoticeable tinnitus. If you would have told me that at the beginning, I said, there's no way. So I actually had to be careful not to back off too soon on the sound therapy. Get up, customize to you. I had a note from Dr. Tracy on my computer of 10 things that would bring my nervous system down or calm me down. And it sounds funny, but I'd have to read the list out loud to myself. And I kept a journal. You're not really supposed to, but some people aren't supposed to. I kept a journal of just the wins. And I kept telling myself that this is the testimony to help others, so that there was an end game. Because if there's no end game, I could see how you could suffer. You really could suffer in this. So hopefully that's helpful. I don't use anything at night anymore for the most part. Maybe something very light, but I don't wear a sleep band or I don't wear maskers at night, if that's helpful. But there's days I cried. There's days it's really gritty. There's days I was frustrated, but just keep coming back. And I would text Dr. Tracy when I landed on my first flight and said, hey, I got here. The little wins, celebrate it. All of a sudden you'll go, whoa, it's 2 hours. I didn't hear it. It's shocking, right? but it happens. And look at the research. Like Dr. Ben interviewed Jesserboff one time. Dr. Jesserboff, that's a really good video because that's science. If you're a science person and you like black and white, you like stats, you like numbers, it's proven, right? Not proven. It's the evidence leads to a certain outcome. I'll put it that way. And just keep believing that. Keep thinking it.
We have a question here. Melinda, what did you find was the most helpful sound therapy if you were to awaken in the middle of the night? And then also, what was the best sound therapy for you during the day? If you could talk about the type of sound as well as what technology you used to listen to it from.
Yep. So a lot of times at night and when it was intense, I used crickets, which are natural to the environment here at night. So I really liked that. But I did use the maskers, just the normal sound that was piped in, streamed in from the app, because Bluetooth wouldn't mess with that. Phone calls would, you know what I mean? It was steady and consistent. So I did use that a lot in the beginning. You're finding the mixing point. And then I switched to more forest noises. But what is really cool is on some of the apps, you could put in like a pink noise and like a bird noise. You could mix them because that sometimes if you're just going to do like a bird noise or something that's inconsistent and there's no background, then you're hearing the tinnitus in between those noises and it's really frustrating. So those are really cool. Those apps where you can mix them in and be creative, have fun with it if you can. You know what I mean? Like there's a million resources out there to find a noise that you like and it customized. And you don't have to say, well, this gentleman liked white noise. If I did white noise, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have come out of this because it drove me nuts, if that's helpful. So.
Yeah, very helpful. And how about dealing with stress on a daily basis? Were there any specific techniques other than listening to our success stories? And you're really passing on to future individuals here after you listen to success stories. Now you're sharing yours. I think that's great. Other than hearing positivity around tinnitus and outcomes, what kind of daily exercises were helpful for you?
Oh, I forgot to mention, I did the Dr. Ben's meditations, the 1 through 7, because it was nice to have it numbered. And when my mind was really scattered and panicky, I'm like, okay, it's number 1. We're doing number 1 today. We're doing number 2 today. And I just needed really simple things. And so those are really, really good. Now I've kind of veered off on some other things that don't always say the word tinnitus because I don't always want to think about it. So no offense, but I've kind of ventured off into some other things. But it was really helpful at first because I just needed some type of consistency. So the meditation, but I will tell you, I didn't want to admit that it was tied to my stress level or nervous system because I was a little stubborn. But if I get in traffic now or some type of situation, it ramps up. So I just have to like take a deep breath and talk to my higher power for a second and back it off. And I don't behave all the same ways I used to because I don't want to go into that red zone and spike it up, or I should say fluctuate. I don't want the fluctuations anymore. And you learn pretty quickly. Mine's not diet related at all. I thought it was low iron. I thought it was caffeine. I tried all kinds of different things and it didn't matter to me. I'm just making myself crazy trying to eat a restricted diet. Some people it is, but for me, it wasn't. Mine is nervous system related.
You shared that you were able to fly. Are there any other normal everyday situations that you can do now that some months ago you thought would be impossible?
Yeah, I'm totally back. I had a hard time going to church services. I had a hard time going to anywhere loud. Any restaurants, I don't have hyperacusis, but it would kind of like tinny, like it would echo around. I don't have any of that anymore. The only time I hear it is like if I happen to go into a room where it's silent, I hear it then, or if I'm having like a stressful moment, I can hear it kind of ramping up. But I'm doing everything that I've had 5 or 6 trips. We're going to Greece for the summer. I'm not worried at all. It's an overnight flight, of course. The plane's fine, but bring your stuff, bring your earpiece. When I started, my purse was full of like stuff recommended by Treble Health. I had earpiece, I had my mask. I mean, I had all kinds of things just to be calm in my list. And it, like I said, the airplane's a non-issue. I can't think of anywhere I don't go now. I don't avoid doing anything.
Love to hear that. Dr. Tracy, any final words on your perspective of seeing Melinda go through this process and how it can help others going through tinnitus?
The last thing I was going to say is that towards the later stages, Melinda and I definitely talked about this, where, when you start to feel better, it's really common to start to taper off and slack off of doing some of the things, like the consistent things that we know help with the stress levels, the anxiety levels, the sound itself. And so in the later stages, I feel like it's actually even more important to really double down on being consistent with those strategies, right? And it's like, oh, I know I've had a really stressful day and I can sense that my tinnitus or my tension is starting to kind of rise. It's about being really strategic, and it's about knowing and being aware of that, and then quickly implementing the strategies that work, right? And so we talked, I think that's a common thing that comes up too. It's like naturally, as we're feeling better with this over time, that there's a tendency, just like with, if you're doing a diet, you want to lose weight, like you lose that first, 10 pounds, you're like, all right, I'm doing awesome. And then you like slowly start to eat the things again, or, exercise. So in the later stages, I think just keeping in mind that it's just as important to kind of be consistent with all of the things, right? This comprehensive approach that we're talking about. It's putting together and doing those things consistently and daily. And even once you're at stage 4, to recognize when you're feeling stressed or if you're not getting great sleep, and to really sort of like immediately, right, put into place some of those things that we know help. And the beautiful thing is that you have all the tools you need, and you know exactly what to do, and you're in control of the situation now. And that's a big piece of it. So just know Melinda is like joy to work with. So I'm so happy that she's where she's at.
Yeah, you too. And I we're short on time, I'm sure, but I told Dr. Ben that when I graduated, I quote unquote graduated last week, I cried. And this is real. This is real work. But we're going to talk again, stay in touch. And you mentioned something I didn't say earlier. I had to give myself permission not to sit and focus on it. That was not, just do something right away, take action right away with the maskers or change the noise. That's huge. That was huge for me. Thank you. And trust what Treble's doing. Trust the research. Let yourself trust the process.